Go hang out with a friend.
What is...
I made some. What do you think? You don't like it? That?
Did you...
You could... Yes, I can.
Air.
As long as there's 3 failed attempts on the system. I've changed. Life is a series. Choice is your consequence. Ms. Vente, you do. You want a blanket. If I say every privilege, you...
The house on Willow Lane looked no different from any other on the street. A white porch, neatly trimmed grass, curtains that always stayed drawn a little too tight. Neighbors waved at the Crowder family when they drove by, never guessing the truth buried beneath the carefully painted walls. To them, Don Crowder was a respectable man, stern perhaps, but polite enough. A husband, a father, a man who worked, who mowed his lawn, who complained about taxes and weather like every other suburban dad. Inside that home, however, the air felt heavier. Every movement, every word, every breath seemed to orbit around Don. His wife, Irene, moved as if on invisible strings, calculating his moods before saying anything. Their oldest daughter, Marie, learned early that silence was safer than debate. But the youngest, Sarah, had always been different. She had questions, opinions, dreams that didn't fit inside the lines Don drew for her. The older she grew, the more her independence angered him. He couldn't understand why she needed friends, or why she wanted to go out, or why she thought she deserved choices. He called it protecting her. Everyone else called it strict. But Sarah knew the truth nobody else said aloud. Her father didn't want a daughter, he wanted a possession.
Please let me out! Hello?
And when she fell in love with Chris, a kind boy who treated her gently, Don's world began to tilt. He watched their interactions with eyes that were too sharp, too cold. "You're not leaving this family," he said one night when she returned late. The threat in his voice wasn't shouted. It didn't have to be. Sarah was counting the days until her 18th birthday. The day she planned to leave home legally, finally free from Don's suffocating control. She and Chris whispered plans, looked at apartments, talked about jobs. It was the first time she saw a future shaped by her own choices. The night before her birthday, the house simmered with tension. Don sensed her slipping away like sand between his fingers. Every answer she gave him felt like defiance. Every breath she took felt like betrayal. When she finally retreated to her room, her heart beat with excitement. Tomorrow, she thought, everything changes. She didn't know Don already had a different plan. For months, he had been constructing something in the basement, a hidden room behind a false wall. A place he told the family was a storm shelter, though storms had never frightened him.
What's that?
Smell you? About Steve. Sarah, first grade. Right after graduation.
Wait, so you're...
My wife said she didn't say anything about Steve.
No, that's fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Anything. You'll be the...
He worked on it long after everyone was asleep, hammering quietly, sawing wood with a precision that came from obsession. The truth was far darker. He was building a prison. On the morning of her 18th birthday, Sarah went downstairs to start laundry before leaving to meet Chris. She was smiling without even realizing it. She was almost free. Don was waiting. At first, his voice was calm, eerily calm. "I need to talk to you," he said, gesturing toward the basement. Against her instincts, she followed. Maybe she believed he wanted to apologize. Maybe she simply wanted one last confrontation before she left. But the moment she stepped near the hidden door, something inside her screamed. She turned to run. He grabbed her. Her scream was swallowed by the concrete walls as he dragged her inside the small room. The door slammed shut. A metal lock snapped. Sarah pounded and kicked until her throat burned, but Don walked away without looking back. Upstairs, he washed his hands as if wiping away dirt. When hours passed and Sarah didn't show up for her birthday plans, Irene became worried. By evening, worry turned to fear. They called police. Posters were made. Marie and Irene searched the neighborhood. Chris begged for answers. But Dawn simply repeated the same line over and over. She ran away. She always said she would. His calmness convinced the authorities. Weeks passed. Leads went cold. Eventually, her case blended into the thousands of missing teen files archived in forgotten drawers. Meanwhile, in the dark room beneath the floorboards, Sarah's life collapsed into a single endless day. Time blurred. Cold air seeped through cracks. She slept on a thin mattress. Her meals were whatever Dawn decided she deserved, sometimes daily, sometimes withheld to teach her a lesson. She begged, she threatened, she cried, but nothing touched him. Dawn didn't just want her imprisoned. He wanted her erased. Months rolled into a year. Sarah's hope died in pieces. She marked days with scratches on the wall until she lost track. She stopped screaming because no one came. She talked to the walls because silence was worse, and in the middle of that endless void, something unimaginable happened. She realized she was pregnant. Fear consumed her. She didn't know how to survive as one person. How could she protect another life inside her?
Hello. We go on a little adventure. But before we brave.
Yeah!
Let's do this. Shh, shh, shh. Quick. Look! Could that be what I think? A waterfall!
Our
But the
old
months
neighbor,
came
Steve.
anyway. Dawn ignored her cries, her sickness, her pleading. When the labor pains arrived, she delivered her child alone, gripping the mattress until her fingers bled. She named the baby Marie, after the sister she feared she'd never see again. Something changed in Sarah then. The darker the basement felt, the fiercer she became. She rocked her baby to sleep, whispered stories about the world above, promised her a life she didn't know how to reach. 2 years later, another child came. A boy. She named him Thomas. Then years after that, another daughter, Grace. Each child grew up believing the basement was the world. They'd never seen sunlight, never felt wind. They learned their alphabet from scraps of paper.
What if you took this one upstairs?
What kind of a mother?
Not enough room down here for two. And hey, what are you doing?
Come here.
Here. Michael, help you. Please.
They played with toys made from old containers. They clung to their mother, who shielded them from Dawn's rage. Her children were her anchor, her purpose, her hope. Upstairs, Irene grew hollow. Her daughter's disappearance haunted her more fiercely each year. She often sat by the window, staring at nothing, replaying Sarah's laughter in her head. Sometimes she thought she heard noises from the basement, a thud, a cry, a faint echo. But Dawn always dismissed it. "It's the pipes," he'd say sharply, and she'd shrink away, afraid to push further. Fear was the glue that kept the family silent. Marie, now an adult, never stopped searching. She questioned neighbors, pushed police, chased theories. But in all those years, she never looked toward her own basement. Dawn had made sure of that. As the children in the hidden room grew older, they began to question the world. "Why can't we go outside?" Thomas once asked. Sarah had no easy answer. All she could do was hold him tighter and say, "One day." Then came the winter that almost ended everything. Grace, the youngest, fell violently ill. Fever shook her tiny body. Her breathing grew shallow. Sarah screamed for Dawn, begged him, sobbed, promising anything if he would help. Even he couldn't imagine letting the child die, not because he cared, but because a death meant questions. But instead of doing the right thing, he punished Sarah first. He ensured she knew her place. Then finally, he carried the feverish child upstairs and drove to a hospital, telling the staff she had been dropped off at his door. Grace survived. And Sarah realized something powerful. Dawn's control wasn't perfect. His lies could break. His decisions could slip. That night, as she held Grace, she whispered a promise. "We are getting out." Months later, fate intervened. A storm rolled across the neighborhood, dragging down power lines. The electricity cut out with a snap. The basement door, normally sealed with an electronic lock and heavy bolts, clicked weakly, its mechanism faltering. Sarah froze. Her heart pounded. She reached out and tested the door. It moved. She didn't breathe. She didn't think. She woke her children, pressing her finger to her lips. They climbed the stairs, trembling, eyes wide with fear and excitement. At the top, the air felt warmer, richer. Her children whispered, "Is this the outside?" The hallway seemed enormous to them. Sarah felt the first spark of freedom in 20 years. Then she heard footsteps. Dawn had come home early. He froze when he saw them. His face twisted into something monstrous. "Get back down there," he roared, lunging forward. Sarah pushed her children behind her. The hallway erupted into chaos, shouting, shoving, years of rage and terror exploding into a single moment. Dawn grabbed her arm. She fought, nails scraping, feet kicking, voice raw with 20 years of held-back screams. And then the front door opened. Marie walked in. She saw them. 3 children she'd never met, children who looked like Sarah. Her mind took only seconds to piece everything together. Her face drained of color. "Oh my God," she whispered, stepping backwards as if the truth physically struck her. "Where did they come from?" she asked, breath shaking. Sarah met her eyes. From the basement. Everything after that moved in a blur. Irene stumbled in next, hearing the shouting. When she saw Sarah, older, thinner, eyes haunted, she let out a broken sob. She collapsed to her knees, her body shaking with years of guilt and shock. She reached out with trembling hands as if touching Sarah might make her vanish again. The police arrived within minutes, summoned by Marie's frantic 911 call. Dawn tried to run. He failed. Officers tackled him on the lawn as neighbors gathered in confusion. The secret he'd hidden for 20 years spilled out in sirens, flashlights, and horrified gasps. Downstairs, police discovered the room, the thin mattress, the makeshift crib, the drawings on the wall, the scraps of life lived in shadows. It looked like a tomb that had been barely kept alive. The officers who entered came back up with tears in their eyes. Sarah and her children were taken to the hospital. The sunlight hurt their eyes. The open sky made them dizzy. The wind felt like something alive touching their skin. They clung to Sarah in fear. She clung to them in hope. Irene hovered close, desperate to make up for the years that had slipped through her fingers. Marie refused to leave her sister's side. Chris, older now, wounded by years of heartbreak, walked slowly into the hospital room, his voice cracking when he whispered her name. And Dawn? Dawn faced charges that would ensure he never saw freedom again. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, countless years of cruelty, all laid bare before the court. There was no defense, no explanation that mattered. His sentence was a cage much smaller and darker than the one he built. For the first time in decades, Sarah breathed without fear. She watched her children explore playgrounds, touch grass, stare at stars. They asked hundreds of questions about sky, cars, dogs, people, music. Everything was new to them. Healing didn't come fast, but it came. Every morning Sarah woke up knowing she was no longer underground. Her children woke up knowing the world was larger than four walls. The sunlight that once felt unbearable began to feel warm. The wind that frightened them became comforting. The sky became theirs. And in quiet moments when her past tried to drag her back into shadow, Sarah would look at her children laughing in the grass and remind herself, she survived the darkest part of the world. She walked out of it, and she built a life in the light again.